episode 265 of the AHRC Marathon Training Blog. MK here, and it's Monday. Happy Monday. Kids had a recovery run this morning. Unfortunately, it was raining a little bit too hard. We like to run in the rain, but when it's a little bit chilly outside and we run the risk of lowering our immune system and catching cold, we try to avoid getting soaking wet. So today we went to the gym and ran on the mill. Kids did 6 miles of recovery. Haven ended up doing 5.5 miles at 9:50 per mile. And Cole and Evan did theirs at around 8:35 per mile. The kids really dislike running on the mill. I think it's a giant psychological burden to run on the mill. There's still air, so you sweat a lot and you feel everything, and it's just so noisy, and just like the impact of the feet onto the treadmill is like super loud, and the motor is super loud, and it's just really distracting. But we were able to watch a little bit of TV, they watched a little bit of Family Matters, and got to enjoy a little bit of Urkel action. Today we're going to talk about my running journey and how I got started in running. But before we get into that, I want to remind everybody to be sure to go and watch the blog from 2 days ago of our Path Projects unboxing, so that you can enter and have a chance to win one of our Path Projects caps. There are plenty to go around, and I'll do multiple drawings, so please be sure to watch the blog to find out how you can leave your entry, and I'll start doing multiple drawings next week. So how did my running journey begin? I think I have to start way back when I was a kid. I was a student at my dad's Taekwondo school, and I was the worst martial arts student on earth. I think I had the record at his school for the student who had the yellow belt ranking for the longest period of time. And that's not something to be proud of, because that meant that I failed so many tests and I never made it to the next level, which was green belt. That was kind of a rite of passage, because moving from yellow to green belt meant in our school that you would be moving to kind of more of an advanced ranking. And my dad had no qualms about failing his son multiple times during those tests. I must have been a yellow belt for years, and then one day when I was around 13 years old, I decided that I didn't want to be the worst student anymore. So I would go to 2 classes a day and practice for 2.5, 3 hours, and then I would come home and practice for another 2.5, 3 hours at home. So I think that 4 to 6 hours of training every day made a big difference, and I was able to not only like kind of move through the rankings pretty quickly, but through that experience I learned the importance of repetition in order to hone any type of skill. I realized that you have to be very, very focused and very diligent, and you need a certain type of discipline to be able to repeat a certain activity, a certain motion multiple times, hundreds of times, thousands of times, in order to kind of gain a certain level of mastery. And I think that kind of parlayed into other areas of my life, whether it was at school, or later when I started my career at my job, and then later after that into my hobby of running. So I pretty much practiced martial arts up until I was around 18 or 20 years old. But through high school, I had a group of core friends who were in track and field and cross country. And our school had a giant cross country tradition. They were state champions for like many years in a row, and kind of dominated the 3A high school size in North Carolina. So I was not necessarily peer pressured, but just by association kind of moved into this area of cross country and track. And I was not a runner. I was not a distance runner. I was probably the worst runner on the cross country team. I was just basically on the cross country team just to hang out with my friends. And when indoor track and track rolled around, I would just try any event and really struggle, and pretty much felt like I was dying every time I was at practice or at an event and trying to race as hard as I can. So there were a few field events that didn't have so much running in them, and I wasn't big enough to throw, and I wasn't explosive enough to do any of the jumping events. But I had a decent amount of kind of all around athleticism. So I tried to pole vault, and you only have to run like 50 feet. So I gave pole vaulting a shot. So I went to college, and I walked on to I was a terrible pole vaulter, by the way. I was really, really bad. But I was able to walk on to my college team, and that's where I realized that the folks there who are in NCAA Division I athletics are pretty much superheroes. I mean, they had us in the weight room for almost 20 hours a week, just lifting weights. And that's before we even stepped onto the track. Suffice to say, I only lasted a semester, and until my grades were suffering and I was just barely surviving. I was sore all the time. I hadn't experienced anything like that in my life, of working out that much and that intensely. But I think that also kind of helped contribute to this idea of not just number of repetition, but just the intensity level that it takes to be really, really good at something. And then fast forward, after that, I just did a lot of jogging just to stay fit. I did a lot of weightlifting because of my experience in track and field in college. After college, I worked for a couple of years in North Carolina, and then I moved to Korea, and I started working and living there and living that lifestyle and that Asian kind of mentality of work, really, really, really hard, and combined with this idea that I'm super, super intense and I'm all about repetition and high volume and things like that. And I was working like 70 hours a week. It was nuts. It was exactly the stereotype of what people view of folks working in Asia, like in Japan or in Korea, and the Korean businessman or the Japanese businessman or whatever. And I was living that life. It was pretty grueling. There were times when I wouldn't even come home. I would just work through the night and just take a nap for an hour and then wake up and start working again. And it wasn't surprising to find out that my health was deteriorating. I was living that culture very, very intensely, working super, super hard, drinking a lot, and just smoking way too much. And yes, by the way, I smoked a lot, and I think it's the most disgusting thing now, and I am so grateful that I stopped smoking. Everything is just way, way better as far as quality of life when I am not smoking. But to jump back on topic, one day I was late for a lunch meeting with my boss, and my boss is super scary. So I was like super nervous, and I ran to the elevator, went down 20 floors, and like kind of walked fast 2 blocks to the restaurant to meet him, and had the meeting. And then the next morning I woke up and I was so sore. Like my legs were just on fire and they were just concrete, and my hamstrings were just so tight, and I was in such pain, and I was thinking, why are my legs hurt? And then it hit me. It was because of that 2-block fast walking that I did to that meeting. And I realized how unhealthy I had become. I was skinny fat. I was just low energy all the time. I was working hard, but I wasn't really super positive. And that's when I realized I needed to make a change. So I was just, I think I had this epiphany while I was like walking on the street, and I looked to the side, and there was this bicycle hanging up on the window of this bike shop that I was walking past, and I just bought the bike. I think it was like $150, and I just started cycling. I started cycling everywhere, and I rode that thing all over Korea, like for sometimes like 70 miles at a time. And, because I came from this kind of background of doing things in repetition and high volume and high intensity, and I rode that bike super, super hard. And then I upgraded to more of a road bike, and I upgraded that to a racing bike later on, and I became a pretty good cyclist. Like amongst amateurs, I was like pretty good. And I was able to join like group rides and be in the front of the group, and I was getting really, really fit. And I was fortunate enough to meet a group of friends who lived in the mountains that took me into the mountains of Korea, and that were just so freaking beautiful. I mean, I think there's no better place to cycle in the world than in the mountains of Korea, just because of the infrastructure and how the roads are so desolate and pretty well maintained, and there aren't a lot of cars on the mountain roads because all the cars are diverted through to the tunnels, and nobody takes those roads anymore, so that you can ride in the mountains on road and be pretty safe and not have to worry too much about cars. But those friends weren't just cyclists, they were originally runners, and not only were they runners, they were mountain runners. They were just these normal looking dudes that had this amazing ability to move through mountains and over mountains. And they convinced me, because I'm an idiot, to run my very first race after only 9 months of running, pretty much jogging. I mean, I was a terrible runner. Even though I was really fit as a cyclist, just my bones and my tendons could not handle the running. I think it was just because I had such a strong aversion to running as a kid, and I just never really developed that. And I didn't have any muscle memory at all whatsoever. And so the cycling fitness just didn't translate, and I was pretty much starting from like scratch. And I signed up for my first race, which was a 100K race over the mountains of Korea in Yangyang. And there was over 12,000 feet of elevation gain. I mean, it was a brutal race. Anyways, that thing took me over 14 hours to complete. And that's where I started my kind of running journey through this 100K endurance challenge through the mountains of Korea. And then I just kind of continued on. Like I was really into and in love with the mountain ultra running community and the mountain ultra running scene. I was a huge Kilian Jornet fan, and I was just really into it. I had all the Salomon products, and I just spent a lot of time in the mountains. So shortly after that experience, I moved to California through some consulting work, and after I landed here, I thought, man, I am not leaving this place. It's paradise. It's 300 days out of the year. It's sunny, which doesn't seem like it, because recently it seems like almost every vlog is rain. But we got here, and I decided to make a big change in my personal life and shift from this kind of 70-hour per week mentality to more of a balanced work and personal life mentality. And at that time, I had rarely seen the kids. I would see them for just a little bit once a week on Sundays in Korea and spend a little bit of time with them. But even then, I was just so tired that it was hard to spend any quality time with them. So I took this opportunity while moving to California to kind of switch that up and play more of a more involved role in raising the kids. And I would make breakfast for the kids, and we'd sit down and have breakfast before school, and it was just so dead in the mornings. I mean, like the atmosphere was just so dark, and you know, kids with half closed eyes and barely eating their breakfast and not saying a word and not having any kind of conversation at all whatsoever. And I wanted to change that. So I woke the kids up an hour earlier before school and took them for a walk every morning. And then after the walk, we'd come home, take a full shower, and then get dressed first, and then come down and have breakfast before we head off to school. I wanted everybody to be present, and breakfasts were awesome. Like everybody had bright faces, and we had great conversation, and meals turned into family time, and that translated into dinner as well. And I think it's one of the best things that our family decided to do. And then as time went by, the walking turned into jogging, and we'd just jog a mile, and then jogging a mile turned into jogging 2 miles, and then that steadily increased as well over time, over a long period of time. And it was all jogging. I would say like between 11 to 13 minutes a mile. So, if we were 2 minutes a mile slower than that, then it would have been walking. But it was just very, very light jogging. And then that turned into other interests, like for my oldest son, Cole, and he started trying to run marathons. Of course, they weren't marathons with specific time goals, but marathons with the goal of finishing. I think it was just him watching me race, and I was still doing ultras at the time. And once in a while, with some local friends of mine, I would go out and run a marathon, and Cole would see me running those and come to those events, and he got a little bit interested. And now Cole's 17, he's run over 10 marathons over the years, and the girls saw his example and started getting interested and asking if they could go to an event. They did 5Ks and 10Ks and eventually half marathons, and then they also kind of graduated to the marathon kind of naturally. Of course, they also started with the intention of having a goal to finish and not specific time goals. After running marathons with a goal of finishing, then soon they started realizing like they had some talent. They would go to a local 5K and get on a podium or something like that and running good times, and then they started memorizing their times and started wanting to kind of best themselves and do a little bit better each time. And Evan and Cole took to that most. And during that time, I was starting to get a little bit more interested in helping them and studying more and experiencing more myself and getting myself deeper into road running and moving myself out of running on dirt and more on running on road, and instead of running longer, trying to run faster. And I learned a lot during that time period and started running marathons more regularly. And I think my first kind of marathon kind of time was around 3:15. And I was able to do that with just like a really, really good aerobic base. Like my foundation was giant because of all of the running that I was doing. You know, I did a lot of running at 90 miles per week, like for multiple weeks, for many, many years. And I was able to translate that kind of slow running into a 3:15 marathon. But I was stuck there for a while, and I wasn't able to kind of like break out of that 3:15 marathon for a couple of years. But then I realized there were certain things that I had to do and make my running a little bit more dynamic and accept that I am a slower runner and kind of leverage my kind of base, my cardio base and my aerobic capacity base, and try to leverage that as much as I could. And when I did that, I was able to break 3 pretty easily. So I've run under 3 hours in the marathon several times, and the best time being 2:51. And one of my best marathons, I think, was just this year, running 2:57 rather comfortably at Boston. And not only did my running skill evolve, but the kids, they just skyrocketed. And Evan and Cole took on a much more kind of focused interest in running. Cole more so just for personal challenge, and I think it gave him a lot of confidence. Like I think he felt kind of a correlation between becoming a better runner and then feeling better about himself, and then meeting more friends at school. Even though he's not on the cross country or the track team at school, some of the cross country runners are actually like really good friends with him, and they talk about running. They're friends on Strava and things like that, and they think it's cool that he does marathons. And then Evan took on a far greater interest, I think a little bit less about like how Cole was able to find confidence in himself and apply it at school and integrate that into his personal life. But Evan found kind of like a bigger vision, and she saw Molly Seidel win a medal at the Olympics in Tokyo and was just really inspired. And we saw a little clip of Molly, you know, showing some drawing that she had made when she was 11 years old and how she dreamed of winning an Olympic gold medal. And we saw that, and she's like, oh my gosh, you know, Evan, you are 11 years old. And then Evan took some inspiration there, and she decided that she could do the same thing. I love that my kids are sharing in my marathon journey. I kind of feel for them a little bit because they're not doing the same things that their peers are doing. But I feel a little bit of a sense of relief and reassurance that we're doing the right thing, because most of Cole's friends in high school are injured for most of the year. And although they don't run as many miles as Cole does per week, their intensity level is quite high. And I know some of those kids, and they're just really great kids. They're really great students. They're super, super polite and really good communicators and very mature. But I think they just get run ragged and just run into the ground. They just run way too hard. Their bodies can't keep up with it, and they don't have the strength to keep up with that. I think Cole and Evan, on the other hand, have a larger base to build on top of, and they don't run as fast. We're not running at the paces that 5K athletes run at, which is much faster than a 5K race, right? You have to run it faster than that in order to run at that pace. So we're never running at that pace, and they just do a lot of jogging, I guess. And I think because of that, they've been able to stay pretty much injury-free throughout their kind of running journeys. And because of that, the progress is pretty slow, and also marathoning is kind of tough mentally. But I think they're learning a lot from it. They're taking away really good lessons about life, and they're able to kind of make themselves mentally stronger through their marathon running journey. And I am definitely enjoying my journey. I love the fact that I get to experience this with my children, and I also love the fact that I get to experience it with all of you guys. Once I get healthy again and I can kick this injury, I'm looking to try to further improve my running skills and hopefully help Evan get to her 2:36 in the marathon and qualify for the Olympic trials. We have a long-term plan for that, and we plan for her to be able to reach that goal by the time that she reaches age 16, and she can qualify to toe the line at the Olympic trials for LA. Man, I know this is supposed to be about my running journey, but I think it's kind of hard to talk about my running journey without talking about the kids, and I think you kind of sense that through watching our vlog. If you made it all the way to this point in the video, I love you guys. I love you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you for all the love that you've shown all of us, and all the support and the encouragement. It means so much, and it's such a great help to us in getting through the tough days. Please like this video, hit that subscribe button. It helps out our channel a ton. Find us on Instagram at AHRC, and even though I'm not running, you can follow me on Strava by searching for Michael Kim at AHRC, and join our Strava club by searching for AHRC. And that's going to do it for us today. I hope you have a great day and a meaningful run. We'll see you in the next one. All right, bye now.